But change was coming to Scotland's landscape on a massive scale. The future for much of our native forests was bleak. Nowhere more so than here on Rannoch Moor, where they disappeared almost entirely. What happened here? Did man turn destructive? It's amazing what you find in the peat. Over the years, tree stumps like these have given rise to all sorts of fanciful speculations about Scotland's forests and about the role of man in destroying them. Often, invaders have been given the blame. The Romans, the Vikings, and those perennial scapegoats, the English. But it just doesn't add up.
One, two, three.
By digging down into the peat, pollen scientists like Richard Tipping have found evidence of a much less fanciful story. He's discovered that trees thrived here until about 5,000 years ago, when they suddenly stopped thriving.
Oh, that's all right.
And then slide it down again, and out. There. And
This is a messy bit. Okay.
And
I love this moment though.
oh,
The
this
reveal.
This is the first time you see what's down there.
Here it comes.
And that's it. What we have here in this brown gunge is peat.
Mm.
More importantly, what we have here is a record of how this particular site changes through time.
And what are you looking for in there?
Well, we start to pick up colour changes. So here, from around here upwards, we have a dry period on the bog, perhaps a dry climate. Down here, it's wetter, much, much wetter.
And does that mean rainfall?
These are when climate appears to change very abruptly.
So what did that mean for the trees here?
What we think happened was that the climate shifted. It became cooler and wetter. Both cool and wet conditions mean that the water table in this peat bog starts to rise. Now these pines are adapted to that. All their roots are shallow.
Right.
But if you get water right to the surface, then there's nothing else they can do except die of oxygen starvation, effectively.
It's great to think of these barren flatlands like here in Rannoch Moor and all the rest in a completely different way, as a kind of big, thick forest.
Populations of pine trees across Scotland, from here in Rannoch Moor, way up to the North Mainland of Scotland, all seem to have died at the same time, about 4,000 years ago. People have described this as the collapse of a population. It's the complete failure of the pine ecosystem to cope with rapidly changing climate.
There's quite a lot in a cylinder of black mud, isn't there?
There's a story, yes.
Amazing story.
So around 4,000 years ago, thriving forests all over Scotland drowned suddenly and never came back. Nature changed Scotland's forests, left behind a trail of devastation that man would never match. It's estimated that around half the trees that were once here just couldn't grow when it got cooler. Man wasn't to blame. Not then. Not yet. Man really began to impact on the forests just as this period of climate change ended, when we settled down to become farmers. When we started farming in earnest, at least a quarter of Scotland was still covered in thick forest. But farming changed everything. We moved around less. Instead, we stayed put. We grew crops and kept animals. As we created permanent communities, our axes and our animals began to take their toll on the forests. And in the new clearings we raise monuments to long-forgotten gods, like these in Kilmartin Glen.
We cleared the land as we needed to. As a species, we advanced, while the forests, they retreated acre by acre and glen by glen. But they were never quite abandoned. After all, they were our life support system.
There are no written records to tell us what happened to our pristine forests, to our wilderness. What we do know is that the human population boomed. Soared from an estimated 10,000 back in hunter-gatherer times to maybe as much as 500,000 by the start of the Middle Ages. Which meant our life support system had more life to support. So we became experts at forest management, and we celebrated each year when the forests grew abundant again.
This is Beltane, an ancient festival of renewal, which, as you can see, has been recently revived.
If not completely reinvented. Among all this mystical mayhem are two central characters, the May Queen and the Green Man. In this version of Beltane, the Green Man is killed with fire and brought back to life. His death and resurrection tell a story of renewal, and of the new life that returns to the fields and to the forests each springtime. In medieval times, the Green Man was a popular figure, and the idea he represented was widely understood. But by then, celebrations like Beltane masked a bigger problem. The most sought-after trees of the forest were in serious decline.